everyone, and thanks for joining us. 4:30 Friday afternoon, South African time, for this Gallagher Premiership betting preview. And this week's guest, well, he's based in the UK, so he gets first-hand information, of course. He's got the team sheets. He's seen the selections. Hasn't been a lot of betting movement from what I've heard. But let's welcome Coyle, as he's known on the forum, or Patches, as he's known on Twitter. Patches, welcome back to the show. It's been a while since you and I have chatted.
It has indeed, and happy birthday again for yesterday. I've only watched about 15 minutes of the previous handicap from last night, so I need to finish up with that. That was Crow and Couch, right? Looking forward to the weekend. Isn't it ironic that the 4 Premiership games are all held at separate times this weekend? It's actually pretty amazing. So you
the one weekend we could watch all the games on TV, and it clashes. I bet you they clash with the internationals, though.
Oh yeah, without a doubt they will. And it's just typical, isn't it? And they're all spread out all over the place. So I mean, our focus will probably be on the internationals, but anyway, let's delve into this and try and see if we can find a few winners.
Quick one for you before we start. Patches. Where does the nickname Patches come from? I'm not going to ask you about Coyle. I know that one, and I don't think that's all people want to know. But
Patches is, that's more like an aviation one. A couple of guys they watched. I think it was that Scoot Ball, or what was it called? Rounders or something like that, with that funny chap Ben Stiller, I think it was. And there's a guy in there called Patches O'Houlihan, who's on a wheelchair. I'm not in a wheelchair yet, but certainly I think that's where it's come from, and it's kind of stuck through the aviation sort of side of things.
Okay. I thought maybe it might be betting related.
Exactly.
But cool, let's get into the action. Gallagher Premiership, Brendan. First game. This is a handicaps I got about 45 minutes ago. I'm not sure if there's been any movement. The teams have been out for a couple of hours. Bath plus 4.5 against Leicester, and we've got a total points line here of 51.5.
Okay, Bath. I just had a quick look earlier on today as well to see the team selections. They were actually out yesterday, so I had a good look at them. Bath had a miserable season last season. They've been a little bit better this time around. I think they won their last 2 games. They've only won 1 out of 4 at home, though, sadly. Whereas Leicester also haven't set the world on fire, being the current champions. And having such a wonderful season last season. They're sort of 2 from 4 away from home. Leicester obviously missing a host of players. I think about 10 or 11 players. There's about 5 or 6 in the English team, 1 the Fijian, there's 1 South African, that's Jasper Wiese. And then there's a couple other, like a Tongan and a Samoan. So they're spread out all over the place. They had a good win. I think that was their last win was against Quins. Yeah, that was actually a really good game. Quins were slight favourites, things for that game. Ended up winning it by 8 points and denying Quins a bonus point. I don't think they played for almost a month. 16th of October was their last time they played Leicester. So, they'll be raring to go. Bath were up in Newcastle last week in a very dour game. They won 17 points to 10 to beat a very poor Newcastle side. But it was kind of, as the Oracle likes to say, rubbish against rubbish there, really. There has been improvement with Bath. I looked at their starting 15. They've got 2 players back from the Scottish camp, Redpath and one of the flankers, I believe. I think the handicap might have shortened by a point. There was plus 5.5, I think, Bath at one stage. I think the handicap is well set. You would expect Leicester possibly to win it. But back at the stoop and with Bath sort of bouncing around a little bit now after a slightly better start to the season, possibly they could pull off a result. 51.5 points, that's kind of where I'm looking at. I'm looking at maybe an unders there. My reasoning there, the weather is okay. It's a Friday night game. It's Tom Foley. Okay, so he's an experienced referee. He's probably a neutral sort of referee, I'd say. 51.5 points. I'm going to go unders there. Just a sort of a medium bet, a small to medium bet there. The handicap, I think, is well priced. If anything, I'd probably lean towards Bath, just because Leicester are missing so many players, and they just don't seem to have that same sort of drive as they did last season. And Bath are the ones that, need the confidence and have a little bit of confidence of late. And with that in mind, I'm kind of thinking, that they'll be up for the game this evening. Leicester with pretty much a put together side. Yeah, there could be a few errors and a few error handlings and a few combination problems. So under 51.5 is probably my call in that game. Sadly, it's the only game tonight. So yeah, that's why it's only going to be a small to medium. I don't want to enter Saturday with a loss.
Okay, let's move on to the next game. Gloucester. I don't have a points line for you here. The Gloucester minus 13.5 against the Newcastle Falcons.
Yeah, Gloucester. It's quite a large handicap. Newcastle extremely poor though. Gloucester, yeah, a number of players missing with the English squad in particular. 13.5. It's probably a handicap that they can cover. They got an excellent record at home. They've beaten all of Exeter, Bristol, Wasps at home. And then they beat Irish and someone else who were Bath away. So Bath perhaps might not have been such a big result. They're renowned for their set piece. Excellent set piece, excellent driving maul. Their scrums are powerful. Backline's a bit wishy-washy. I mean, you got Billy what's his name? Or Billy Roundtree or 12 Trees at inside centre. I mean, that guy's got to be into his late 30s now. I mean, he's still a dependable player, but that's just kind of like they're scraping the barrel a little bit in the backline in particular. Newcastle, on the other hand, I mean, they can blow hot and cold. Very poor last week. They'll probably look to improve. And funny enough, they're one of those sides that sometimes plays better away from home than they do at home. Sometimes. Is it one of these afternoons? So this kickoff is at, I think, 3 p.m. The ref for this, the newish sort of ref, Anthony Whitthorpe, don't know anything about him. I think it's only his 10th game in the Premiership. 13.5. I mean, if anything, I'll maybe lean towards Gloucester on the minus. But, Newcastle are the kind of side that if you don't take them seriously, they can score a few points, But having said that, they haven't had a great season so far. It's probably not a game I'm going to get too involved in because it's around the 3 p.m. anyway. I think if you had to have a game, possibly look at Gloucester on the minus. But yeah, it's one game I'm not going to get too involved in, especially with Newcastle involved. They're just kind of one of those dodgy sides. You expect them to fold like a pack of cards and somehow, they pull off like a good performance, But yeah, I won't be getting too involved in that one.
Right, Exeter minus 6.5 against London Irish.
Okay, yeah, so this is the 5 o'clock kickoff. Weather, by the way, in the UK is good the whole weekend. No rain expected, just cool conditions, and not even that cool, sort of 15, 16 degrees sort of temperature. Yeah, London Irish. Oh, man, they've been very unlucky their last 2 games. I was very lucky to be at the Stoop for their last dramatic loss in that controversial game against Harlequins, where sort of the referee could easily, and even the TMO could have stepped in for a sort of 2 players going for a high ball. Then an Irish player, I think one of the South African players, and Rensburg, I think he got knocked to the ground. Oh man, any other ref could have given that as a penalty to Irish, and somehow play went on and it went deep into injury time. Harlequins scored in the corner, and London Irish were beaten by 2 points. And the week before, they were just beaten by Gloucester after having a handy lead, and they lost by a point. And with Paddy Jackson missing quite an easy penalty at the death as well. They've changed their side quite a bit, London Irish. There's quite a bit of rotation, obviously, in both sides. I mean, Exeter obviously missing a lot of players to internationals, as well as quite a few injuries as well. So there's definitely some weakness found in both teams. The handicap, 6.5. I can't really call it at the moment. Part of me wants to go for London Irish, but when I saw their starting 15, I think there's some question marks in their pack. The backs look okay. They are scoring tries this season, London Irish, and of course they pulled off the double last season in the Gallagher in the Premiership. They beat Exeter at home at Sandy Park, 22-31, and then in the return at the Brentford Stadium, it's got a new name now, I think the G-Tech Stadium or something. They beat Exeter 18-14. So that was something, there might be a little bit of a bogey side. So with that in mind, I'd have sort of a medium bet on London Irish. Medium to, sort of a medium bet on the plus 6.5. Like I said, I'm just a little bit worried about that pack. But at the same time, Exeter side doesn't look that great either. And I think there might just be a little bit of value with London Irish.
Darren saying Irish are decent. He thinks the cap is about right, and I can hear from the way you're talking as well that the bookies are giving nothing away this weekend as far as the
And
unfortunately, we don't have.
Sorry, Brent. Yeah, and like you said, there's been very little movement right since the beginning of the week. So yeah, they certainly have done their homework this week.
Yeah, they have, and we don't have points lines on all of the games. Unfortunately, I'm not saying they aren't out there. So, if, Darren, I know you're watching live. If you do know of any besides the first game, let us know. Let's go into the final game of the weekend. It does always feel weird still to talk with just the 4 games on Gallagher Premiership, but we've got Saracens here, -7.5 against Northampton Saints. And Brendan, I don't follow the Premiership as closely as you guys, but obviously I do the show and I do throw it into my multiples and that. But if I had to say one game that I'd probably want to watch this weekend, it would be Saracens against Northampton Saints.
Yeah, and well, what time is the game? New Zealand against Scotland, or Scotland against New Zealand?
4 o'clock or 4:15 or something.
4:15 on our time, huh?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, you get to watch the first half at least anyway, because it's off at 3 o'clock. Sarries, yeah, sure. What a start they've had. 8 out of 8, no losses. They topped the log. They've been terrific. Despite losing a lot of players, they just seem to have that depth all the time and just such a well-coached side, right? Saints inconsistent, but on their day they certainly can play really well. They lie 4th, but way behind. Just shows you that they've only won 4 and lost 4, but they're still in 4th position. So behind Sarries, there seems to be a big gap at the moment. Certainly, they're going to be playing at the X Stadium, artificial pitch. No concern anyway, because it is the weather is good. I'm looking at a halftime bet here. I think Sarries are going to start reasonably well, and I expect them to hold a healthy lead at sort of halftime. So -3.5, -4.5. That's where I'm pretty confident on that selection. The -7.5, yeah, I'd probably go with that as well. Although Saints, on their day, like I said, they can play really well. Both sides obviously have shuffled and reshuffled a couple of times. But Sarries have only made 1 change, I believe, and that's at lock. So for now, yeah, for me, a halftime bet on Sarries, a quick start, and second half sort of up for grabs kind of thing. And that I probably wouldn't get involved in the full handicap though. So I'm just going to go with the halftime bet. Hopefully, it's arrived by the time Scotland face New Zealand.
I might even look at a halftime bet here because it's if you can only watch the first half and you want to watch the international, it makes sense one way or another to have your bet wrapped up.
Yeah, either that or you'll be sweating going into the sort of the Scottish game. And I
tell you, watching 2 games at once, even if you've got one on a different screen and that, it's not great when you've got money on both. You're jumping around. I like the halftime the selection there. Just Darren does say that points line is 58.5, and he likes Sarries at home. He doesn't really follow. He doesn't think that Saints away are going to do the business there. So I think you two very much in agreement on that one. But points line 58.5, that's obviously high, but conditions good, artificial track, and the Gallagher Premiership certainly, I don't know about in the recent weeks quite as much, but it's thrown in some real high-scoring games.
It can do, and in particular, Sarries at home as well. That they're a side that can score 3-4 tries very quickly, and I've seen it in the past. Where there might be 14, 18, 20 points scored in the first half, and you think you're dead and buried, and the second half just opens up completely. And I think certainly the way the Northampton Saints are playing as well, there should be points. It's kind of a game that points are written all over it. I mean, me as an unders punter in general, 58.5. It probably sounds about right. I think the only worry you have generally is just the fact that there's so many different combinations. Guys might not be so familiar with themselves and with their partners. So that would be my only real concern. But other than that, I mean, Sarries have just been fantastic this season so far. And even when it's their B side, pretty much, they're still terrific. So I want to go back maybe to the London Irish game. That's a game that I'm thinking of the total points there. I don't know. I haven't seen any total points for that game yet, so I'm not sure if Darren can help us. But that's a game that I would consider maybe an unders there as well. London Irish's defence has certainly improved. They're a very attacking orientated side. certainly from last season as well. But I've definitely noticed their defence has become a lot stronger, which might stop them from attacking as much, therefore. And I really think they want to try and do the business over Exeter, especially after their 2 last narrow losses. And, that they're a good enough side, Irish. And, unders there would be...
53.5. We got a line here from Darren. 53.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'd go unders there, 53.5. Who's the referee for that game? Hamish Smales. Yeah, also a newish kind of a referee. I haven't quite worked him out yet. He seems pretty down the middle so far. But so they're London Irish on the plus. Like I said, with the concern just a little bit about their pack and their bench, but it's not too bad. And then the unders possibly. And I'm just hoping for a bit of a scrappy game.
Right, well, let's move on then. When I ask you about best bets, I'd just like you to start off with your best bet in the Gallagher Premiership, and then we'll just touch on some of the other games. In fact, I think we'll run through it just very quickly. Just not a lot, just get your opinion. I'll share mine as well, seeing that I wasn't on the handicap. But first, your best bet on the Gallagher Premiership.
I'd go with Saracens at halftime if you can get the -3.5 or -4.5. I'm sure if you shop around, you should be able to get the 3.5. And hope they do the business. I mean, it's not a bet that I like taking because, always wait till the full 80 minutes. You either get a try to sort of help you or a try to invariably sort of screw you over, or a kick or anything like that. But halftime bets, I don't have a great record in them in general because I don't take them that often either. And it's just not a game, not a bet I'm really fond of. But I'm pretty confident about this one on Saturday. It'll be Sunday. Sunday's game.
Yes. Okay.
So,
right. Let's quickly jump through the internationals, Brennan. We won't take up much more time. But just if you've got a firm opinion on the game, just let me know what you think. I think this handicap's a bit outdated. Italy plus 15.5 against Australia. Sadly. I see it's down to about 12.5 now. I'm just using banners from last night's show. Yeah. Anything there for you?
That's the only bet I took this week so far. Early on, I managed to get the plus 16.5 actually, Italy, at 8 to 10, just for a small bet. I was kind of hoping that it wouldn't shorten as much, but of course, it has. It's come right into 12.5. You might be able to squeeze a little bit of 13.5 here and there. Sure, that's one of my best bets of the weekend. I know it's incredibly dangerous going for Italy. The Wallabies were sensational last week against France, despite France possibly not at their best, that's for sure. I still don't rate this Wallaby side. I think there are weaknesses all over the park. It was a narrow loss. It must have taken something out of them as well. There's a couple of new combinations in the back again, a little bit of rotation, whereas the Italians pretty much have stuck to the same team that smashed Samoa last week. Obviously, Wallabies are not Samoa, but it was just the way Italy sort of ended the Six Nations season this year with a win over Wales, and now a very impressive performance against Samoa. So I think for once the Italians are actually confident and they're bubbling with a sort of a new, finally maybe some kind of breakthrough, in the world scene. I mean, that they have been in the doldrums for 20 odd years, from a promising start in the early days. And I rate that as a really good bet. It's a bet I think they're going to go really close here, and they've got a possibility of winning it. So, if you can get even an outright, Italy, there must be 6 to 1-ish thereabouts, maybe, or 13 to 2 if you can. I might just have a little nibble there as well, just for interest. I think this could go down to the wire, and I think the Wallabies aren't a good side. They really are.
Okay, so we got a confident call there. Obviously, the handicap has moved in slightly there on the Italy game. I'm with you guys there, and I think most of the guys sort of suggesting, Italy can maybe surprise Australia. So I'm with you on that one. Not too involved in the game. Fiji, I've seen minus 27.5, minus 28.5. I believe Ireland have named a fairly strong side. Anything for you on that one?
Yeah, and I agree. When the handicap came out early in the week, it's hardly moved. I think I saw 28.5 maybe at the start of the week. And I firmly thought, jeepers, Ireland must be having, they must be putting a good team together for this game. Team was announced. It's dropped by a point. It's a decent Irish side. What I have noticed about Ireland now as well is that in the past they might not have been as ruthless, but they tend to be now. They don't seem to take the foot off the gas, so to speak. Certainly against the lesser nations. But I mean, when you look at Fiji's performance last week, it was superb. And 27.5 just seems too much to me. Surely they can score it, and I did see on the forum there, I think Southpaw, he's tipped the Fiji points 13.5 or thereabouts.
Yeah, you got even money over 13.5 points. I like that as well. And I said I'm following Southpaw. I'm not worrying about the handicap here. I'm going points overs.
Yeah. I would say that seems like a sound bet. 13.5. You always wonder about the Fiji kickers, but I'd also go for the plus 27.5 as well. I think it's just too much.
Well, let's go England-Japan. I must say, early in the week, I handicapped this game a little bit bigger, but clearly most of the guys that I've spoken to here in the Japanese camp, I think England's backline is going to be a bit sluggish and Japan can potentially run them off. I'd say the other side of the coin is that England's pack, I'm expecting them to take control of this game. I'm actually leaning towards England on the handicap here at 18.5. What's your views on this one?
I got no view on this one, Brent. England, there were times in that game last week against Argentina where I thought, the momentum swung towards England in the home side, and they had the huge stadium behind them at Twickenham, and everyone was crowing in the background, "God save the Queen, God save the King," whatnot, and they didn't. And to be fair to them, Argentina came back to beat them. And I find it quite astonishing because for me and what I was watching, I thought, England are in the ascendancy now. This is it. They should pull away now in the sort of the last 10 minutes, and they didn't. And that must be a huge worry because especially when and even in the players' faces, you could see the despondency after the game. It was a game. How did they lose that? I mean, Argentina played terrifically at times, but England. I don't know. Eddie Jones, question marks. Of course, the newspapers were out for his blood this week again, and probably rightly so. But I mean, if he walks away with the World Cup next year, well, then so be it. But it just doesn't look likely at this stage. Chops and changes.
Yeah, I don't see them winning the World Cup. I think for me, Eddie Jones has stayed 4 years too long. He had his crack. He's a great coach, but guys get used to. You need new blood coming in, and England have made a mistake, in my opinion, holding on to him.
He's got his favourites there, and a lot of those players are brilliant players. But for me, I mean, it might be a game that I might just get involved in running. I didn't see who the referee for that game is actually.
I haven't looked, but let's move on to the next one. Just before we move on, just laughing at some of the live chat here. Mark saying he got Japan minus 22 and he hopped on, and of course he did mean plus 22.
Oh, okay, James Dolman.
For Peter coming in and saying, he did too. He got 8,000 to 1 on the Japan minus 22. But this is an interesting game, Brendan. Wales against Argentina. I priced this at 4.5 Wales. I think the betting's about right, quite frankly. This is going to be a tight game. I'll tell you what I've done. I posted the Good for Game preview earlier. I've gone either team by 7 or less at 11 to 10 at Sunbet. I don't think there's going to be more than a score in this game. If you're looking for a bigger price, similar bet, I know World Sports Betting have the try bet, and the only difference is you lose a point to either side. So it's either team by 6 or less, and you can get about 15 to 10. I don't know why. I just like the shorter price and the extra point either side, 11 to 10. So I think this is going to be incredibly close. If you put a gun to my head, I would say I think Wales are going to get it, more on the basis that Argentina just haven't been a side to back up strong performances week in and week out. And as bad as well beaten as Wales were last week, there were times last week there where they looked they might stay within the cap. They just they lost to a New Zealand side that's coming to hand quite nicely. What are you doing on this game?
Yeah, I agree with you, Brent. I had a small nibble on the Wales plus last week. It was just an interest bet, really. And it was awful. As soon as I had the bet and as soon as the game started, I realized, what did I just do? Because you just knew it was one of those bets that you knew was just hanging on. It was never going to be easy. There was no way Wales could ever win the game, and the handicap was always going to be an issue. Anyway, thankfully, New Zealand pulled away, certainly in the last couple of minutes, scored a couple of tries, and that was the end of that. I agree with you. Wales looked okay in stages. They were bullied off the ball completely. They made a couple of changes, and that what's his name, Reece, whatever his name is, at fullback.
Zammit.
Yeah, Reece Zammit. He's gone to fullback, which is a little bit unusual, but I don't think it will affect him.
I quite like it.
Yeah,
he's a good player.
A lot of question marks. People are talking about it. He's never played Gloucester at fullback and this and that, but I think it could work tremendously because he was pretty much up. He was marked out the game last week against the All Blacks. Wales completely bullied. This is one of my better bets of the weekend. I see now +1 overseas here in Wales, and so if I can get +0.5, that's going to be my biggest bet of the weekend. I think I really like Wales in this game. And for the same reasons that you've just mentioned. Argentina backing up a second performance, a huge win against England last week. We've seen it in the past. I'd rather take my chances and just say, Wales are the team that they'll be up for this and that want to win this. Whereas Argentina might just be a little bit susceptible now after that great win last week.
Possibly, although I suspect that Argentina as well are well aware of that reputation of theirs, and I think Cheika's going to have them very much up for this. That's why for me, this is a 7 points or less game. I see Johan Estes in the green there in the live chat. Let's move on to the next game. France against South Africa. I've seen this as edged to 5.5 in places. I was bullish on France early in the week. I came out pretty early with the preview. I said, this is the bet. I expected this line, and I think I said it in the preview, to start at about 6.5. I'm not sure it will, but I think it's heading in that direction. I've got a feeling that it might edge out a bit more. I'm bullish on the French. I think they're going to be too strong for South Africa. I think they're going to win the battle up front, and I think as much as both teams are going to kick the living crap out of the poor ball, France are the team better at taking the chances when it is time to turn defense into attack. Where you with this one?
I think you're reading my mind, Brent, or I'm reading yours, one of the two, because I agree with that. I last week sort of had my biggest bet in a couple of weeks on the unders, 45.5, Ireland against South Africa. And
I know you were in fact, I must thank you for that, because you were the first one to post it on the forum. And then I started researching it, and I made it the best bet in the newsletter, which hasn't come out, by the way. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go down below the video and whack the subscribe button for that. But you actually were the one who guided me to that under 45.5. And although there was a bit of points in the second half, it was never in doubt, that bet.
Yeah, never in doubt. It was just one of the great games. And I backed it up with a +4.5 South Africa as well. And I was pretty chuffed, obviously, especially after the missed kicks that still arrived. Second half, South Africa were bullying the Irish pack. And they're not going to do that against the French. I can't see that happening. And I think France will want to improve and will improve tremendously this weekend as well. So -4.5, it's a no play for me other than just France -4.5. So much will depend on how the day's gone. If I'm up, I'll be piling into France -4.5 as well.
Yes, we often say that a lot's going to depend on how the day's gone. Well, let's hope the day's gone well. Just one more international. There are other ones taking place as well, but we won't get into all of those. Scotland +15.5 against New Zealand. I'll have a quick check if this handicap has moved since last night. No, we're still sitting at 15.5. I don't really have a firm view on this one yet, Brendan, but you can certainly influence me if you'd like.
Scotland last week, they had chances to put away Fiji at certain parts of the match. And if they had perhaps taken some of those opportunities earlier, they might well have pulled away in the game. They might well have. To be fair, Fiji hung in there, and perhaps Scotland were a little bit ring rusty. It was a dour game against Australia. They lost that narrowly. I can imagine Scotland will be up for it early on, but again, I just can't back Scotland on the plus. Certainly with dry conditions expected again. The All Blacks, I got a feeling that it'll be tougher for them. But if anything, I'd probably go with the All Blacks on the minus. And the main reason really is just that feeling that I had last week with Wales on the plus. The bet just wasn't right from the word go. And I'd be hanging on no matter what happened. Every time New Zealand scored, I needed Wales to score. And all it needed was another All Black try, and then you're in real trouble. If Wales didn't.
And that's what happened in the end, because I was the other way. I was on New Zealand minus. And every time they got 13 points ahead in the second half, Wales would score and it would go down to 6.
Correct.
Then New Zealand would score. And I knew that I just needed that extra score from New Zealand. And after it came, the floodgates open. But I hear you 100%. I mean, it's hard to back again, especially New Zealand have definitely. And Hendrik Swart, I see you made the point on Twitter the other day. He's no longer, I mean, Hendrik's a bit like, like you get these financial guys that rate your country's economy. And if they downgrade your credit rating, for argument's sake, the whole economy collapses. Now, Hendrik Swart is like that on rugby betting. He looks at the coach and he says, and he doesn't rate the New Zealand coach. No. He's been opposing New Zealand for quite some time and with a fair amount of success.
Yes.
But Hendrik is actually officially, he's officially not opposing New Zealand all the time anymore. And he's doing that on the basis of the guys who've come to support the coach. To me, there's been a definite difference since is it Ryan and I think Joe Schmidt that have come in. There's been a marked improvement. And for that reason, although I think Scotland are going to beat this handicap, I'm with you. I can't bring myself to back it. And the reason is the most unpleasant bet in the world. Because even if Scotland are 1 point behind with 10 minutes to go, you're not going to feel safe. And that is the danger of a New Zealand side when they start playing well.
Yeah, exactly. So again, much depends on that Saracens halftime bet to see how we go into this game, So it's one of those games. I'll definitely be looking at the internationals more because obviously I'm enjoying that rugby way more than perhaps the Premiership and even the top 14. But so for now, the focus is mainly on the internationals, but obviously I will be getting involved a little bit on the Gallagher Premiership at the same time.
So final question. I'm coming to the UK, as you well know, going to stay with you for a few days. I'm arrive on the 3rd, leave on the 24th. So let's call it 21 days.
Yeah.
What's the beer spread? The spread of beers that I'm going to have over that time? How would you be pricing it?
Well, there'll be 2 different spreads, I'd say. There'll be the in-house spread where the beers are a lot cheaper.
Yes, you're right.
Where the beers are a lot more expensive. And there'll be a vast discrepancy, I'd say, between the two.
I think you're right. I think most of the beers will be drunk in-house and then go out afterwards.
I would say, that might be a better quote on the like an Uber distance. There might be kilometers driven in an Uber. That might be the better quote, but we'll see. But I'll certainly think of one, and I'll post one on the forum.
Okay, no, excellent, Brendan. But thanks very much, man. Enjoy the weekend. Just one final thing. World Cup cricket, England in the final. Brilliant performance against India, but they play against unpredictable Pakistanis who've taken their chance with both hands that South Africa have given them by losing to Netherlands. What's going to happen? Quick one in the World Cup final. You going to have a bet?
It's a terrible thing. I spoke to you briefly yesterday, wishing you a happy birthday, and the value certainly has to lie with Pakistan. England are odds on at 7 or 10. You can get 11, 12, even 13 to 10 in places Pakistan. And even though they're an awful team to throw the old monthly rent onto, I'd probably have a nibble on them at the 13 to 10, purely based on the value. I think there's nothing between the two sides. If anything, Pakistan possibly might have the better side at the moment if they come together at the same time. But what I also want to mention very, very quickly, though, is I'll also be watching the girls' rugby. And I'm definitely on the New Zealand woman.
Yes.
On the betting side of things, of course. On the handicap for sure. And I'll have a little nibble on the outright.
You're sharp them home. I've got a big bet on them. I was planning to trade, but the markets haven't really shifted. I was hoping they'd be like 15 to 10. But what I am going to be looking for, I must say, because it's a substantial wager, and I mean, I can't say too much because my wife's in the room. No, I'm only kidding. But because it's a fairly substantial wager, my intention was always to trade with it. Fortunately, they made the final. They nearly didn't. But I'll give them a good chance of winning. But I'll certainly be looking for an opportunity. I've had a pretty good run the last 2 weeks. I'm not under pressure to trade. But I'm going to be looking for the opportunity where if they do go ahead of England and I'm able to get even money England, for example, I'll probably cover my stake sit with like 13 to nothing, 1.3 to nothing on my bet. Exactly. I'll be looking for an opportunity.
A points line on that game, Brent?
I haven't seen a points line yet. I imagine we're going to see a points line. I believe conditions not great in Auckland. I've seen some reports on by the way, the previous game.
Late 30s, early 40, 30.
Canada, I think late 30s. I think we're going to get a points line of 37.5 there, 38.5.
Yeah.
And then, funny enough, there is a game before it. The Canada are playing France before. I see, is it Reverend who comes on the show quite often? He on Twitter is quite bullish on Canada. Evidently, France have made a few changes. And Canada sort of picked a front line. And his feeling is that the conditions will suit Canada, with their mauling game. Okay. And that worries me a little bit for the final as well. Because I would prefer dry conditions for the Black Ferns to take on England. But let's see what happens. It's going to be, France South Africa for me is the match I'm really looking forward to this weekend. I can't wait. But if I have to pick a second, and guys will be surprised at this potentially. The second game for me is the final of the Women's World Cup, England against the Black Ferns. I'm really looking forward to that.
Wow, I must say I've thoroughly enjoyed it as well. I must say, believe it or not, there are actually a couple of belters in those rugby sides. But wow, there are some growlers too.
and Trish, who is working in the room here with me, just goes, and your wife when we get over to the
40
UK.
and a half, says Darren. And I think I think that could be a decent unders. Yeah.
Probably, because I think this is also the sort of game, be it England or be it New Zealand, if one of the team gets a bit ahead,
true,
I can see them defending the lead, as opposed to all-out attack to get it back. So it's going to be a lot of defense. Yeah, I would say that 40.5, I definitely lean unders. But look, I'm not getting no further interest for me. I just want the Black Ferns to win. I don't care if they do it in extra time, quite frankly. I just want them to win the cup.
Yeah, no, terrific.
And just to close off there, Johan saying England to win the cricket in the first 6 overs, and Johan, that's a jolly good point. I mean, if those English, I love the way the English play. They do,
they're very attacking.
But at the same time, I think that Pakistan attack at the front of the order, guys like Shaheen Afridi and that, if they get the rub of the green and catch a couple of early England wickets, then you know what it's like. But I totally understand.
I understand that bet. Yeah, not a bad bet at all. I think. Yeah, I mean, like you say, the emphasis and the mindset of the English batsmen is always to attack. So, like you say, 1 or 2 wickets down, they could keep going at it. So the first 6 overs. I wonder what price that is. They'll be
the first 6 overs. They will be favourites and market. But anyway, thanks to the lads who tuned in on a Friday evening in South Africa before beers, or if you were in the UK, got a couple of hours before your beers. I'm heading out to have a bit of a beer tonight.
Enjoy your night.
Forward to that one. Yeah, and Brendan, thanks. Good chatting to you again, man. We'll chat to you over the coming weeks, and also, of course, looking forward to seeing you when I come over.
Yeah, terrific. Love it. And hey,
8 to 10, by the way, Johan says 8 to 10 the first 6 overs.
That's decent. I sort of was thinking around 7 or 10, maybe even 13 or 20. So 8 to 10 is decent value. Yeah, that's actually value to me. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that could be your Sunday interest to get you to the Saracens game. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Thursday, I'll be back on the handicap rugby chat that matters.